Well, it's a new week and we got another set of tuning and balancing changes. And honestly, this week we got some really cool stuff. Some of these changes are things that I think should have been implemented almost years ago. But hey, better late than never, I guess. So there are a bunch of bugs fixed and we got some pretty good quality of life changes as well. Now, as we're approaching release of 11.1, now's the time that we're going to start seeing some actual tuning and number adjustments. So expect over the next couple weeks to see some pretty major tuning. So the first change we're going to look at is activating Vengeful Retreat now enforces a brief cooldown for Felblade similar to its behavior with Fel Rush. Activating Felblade shortly after activating Vengeful Retreat will now cancel Vengeful Retreat's movement if Felblade's target is too close to dash to it. Now, when you read this for the first time, you might not fully get what this is saying, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you so you get it, and you're going to be like, oh, wow, that has happened to me before, and I'm glad it won't happen again. So first things first, it should be noted that Felblade is now sort of mimicking the GCD behavior of Fel Rush. So when you press Vengeful Retreat, you can't Fel Rush for about like half a second or a second. Before these changes today, Vengeful Retreat did not put Felblade on a GCD, so you could press it right away, and because you would press it too quickly, it would not actually pull you back into the target that you were trying to retreat away and hook back into. But now it does put it on a short lockout, meaning you can not really press it too early, like that mistake just can't happen, and you'll be able to press it and it'll pull you back in. Now, what the second line means is this. Think of a raid boss that you've fought in the past that had a really big hitbox, and you've tried to Vengeful Retreat away, and you would Felblade back in, but because the hitbox of the boss was so big, it wouldn't actually pull you back in. Now what will happen, I'll see if I can do it on this dummy here. I'm going to Vengeful Retreat inside of his hitbox and press Felblade, and it still stops the animation of Vengeful Retreat and pulls you into the boss. So this is fantastic. There have been so many bosses in the past where they just have really oddly large hitboxes, and the whole Vengeful Retreat into Felblade combo doesn't quite work. Well, now this is going to prevent that from happening. Now it'll always work. It'll always pull you right back into the targeted mob. And hey, by the way, if you're enjoying this video and you want to keep up to date on all of the Havoc Demon Hunter news and changes, make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you're already subscribed to the channel, make sure you like the video as well, because that alerts the algorithm, tells YouTube that you actually want to see more of my content. So make sure you subscribe and press that like button. Right, so the next change I want to highlight is Cycle of Hatred has been changed from a 2-point talent node to a 1-point talent node, and we get the full benefit as we did with the 2 points, just in 1 point now. So this means we actually get a free extra talent point to spend somewhere. Because if you notice, the bottom 3 in this last row here, Know Your Enemy, Cycle of Hatred, and Chaotic Disposition, they were all 2-point nodes. So now we've freed up a talent point out of Cycle of Hatred, and we can put that somewhere else. We could potentially put it into Shattered Destiny or Essence Break if we were playing a build that didn't take Essence Break or couldn't afford it. Possibly Glaive Tempest, AFI. There's a lot of possibilities. And I want to just make sure you guys understand the significance of this. A lot of times we get a bunch of changes. It'll be like 10% extra damage to this ability, 5% extra damage to this other ability. Total, when you sum all of those together, in the end, it works out to be like a 2% increase to our single target. Or we'll get something like a 4% aura buff to our total overall damage. Well, think of how much damage would actually be encompassed in one capstone talent, or even any talent point lower in the tree. A lot of these talents pack such a punch. Something like Essence Break, going from not having it to having it, is a massive DPS increase. So while there's not anything like explicitly that looks like a buff in the changes that we got today, this is a bigger buff than you would imagine having this free talent point to put somewhere. This is one of the biggest buffs that you can get. So yeah, I'm super excited to have a spare talent point to play around with. It was really tricky to try to get all of the talent points that you needed to play a particular build, because now say you want to play a Throw Glaive and Immolation Aura / Ragefire build, there's a lot of talents that you need to put points into, and it's extremely hard to get everything you need. I don't know if this will totally solve that, but it gets us, one step closer, and we can take one of the talents that we're missing. And yeah, this is a fantastic DPS increase to get the spare talent that we can put wherever we want. Now, this change was not actually documented in the patch notes that we got today, but this is definitely worth highlighting because this was a major issue that we had going into patch 11.1. So what was happening was with our tier set, we would be racking up winning streak stacks. You can see I have 10 up here. And when we press I-beam, it consumes those stacks and gives us a crit buff. What was happening before is we'd press I-beam, we'd convert these winning streak stacks into the crit buff, and then we would press meta, as we do in our opener, right? We have to press meta. Pressing meta counts as entering demon form. So when we would enter demon form, it would then take whatever winning streak stacks we had and essentially convert it into another crit buff, and that lower crit buff would overwrite the potential higher stack that we had. But now that was fixed. So I'll show you what that looks like. If you want to look at my buffs up here in the top right corner, you can see I have 10 stacks of winning streak. So when I press I-beam, it turns all of those stacks into necessary sacrifice, and I have that for an amount of time. Now you can see I'm earning more winning streak stacks. Now if I press meta, it's not actually going to eat those stacks and overwrite the 110 stack that I had. So this is awesome. This is a great change. This is actually going to allow us to do significant damage in our opener, as we should. Before, it was just munching that buff and really like making our tier set bonus useless. So I'm glad to see they fixed that. Now, another bug that was fixed is something that you may have heard me mention in my previous video, where when we take Screaming Brutality, we press Blade Dance and it automatically triggers Throw Glaive on a target. And when you do that, what's supposed to happen is that it actually uses one of your Throw Glaive charges. So you normally have 2 charges. When you press Blade Dance, it would use your Blade Dance, but also use a charge of Throw Glaive. That was not actually happening on last week's PTR. It wasn't actually using a charge of Throw Glaive. So now they've fixed that, and it is successfully using Throw Glaive. So I'm going to press Blade Dance. You can see my Throw Glaive on number 4. Say I have 2 stacks. Press Blade Dance, and it does, in fact, use a charge. So you can really see that this build that we got on the PTR this week has fixed a lot of the bugs that we've been sending them and highlighting and sort of screaming into the void about. So it's great to see them have this quick of a response to some of these things. With Fel-scarred, Student of Suffering was actually lowered in its amount of mastery that it gives us. And this is sort of a response to, I think, an unintended buff that it got last week when they raised our baseline mastery. And by raising our baseline mastery, in turn, it increased the amount of mastery we get from Student of Suffering. So just to give you guys the timeline, on retail, I believe Student of Suffering gives somewhere around like 21% or 22% mastery. After they buffed our mastery in the last week's PTR build, it bumped that up to 27%, which is pretty significant, right? Because it's additive. Whenever you would use Sigil of Flame, it would just tack on an extra 27% mastery on top of whatever mastery your character already has. And you can see on PTR, I have some pretty crazy gear. So I have 91% mastery. You know, tacking on 27% on top of that is a lot of mastery to have. So in this week's PTR build, they went and rolled it back a little bit. They did go a little bit lower than what we have on retail, but that's okay because I think that's actually a really good thing. By doing that, they're actually giving us 2 choices on this choice node. Before this nerf, Student of Suffering was just a lock-in all the time. It was just way too good. But now what I think is going to happen is you'll take Student of Suffering in single target when you're not using the Immolation Aura talents or AFI. And then when you do take those talents, like you're playing a Ragefire AoE build, that's when you would spec into Flamebound. And Flamebound was buffed last week to make it actually a lot more powerful. So Flamebound makes your Immolation Aura have a 2-yard increased radius, 30% increased critical strike damage bonus. This also is increasing the radius of Ragefire. So this is a really powerful talent when you're taking all of these other talents to go with it. It's increasing the radius of Immolation Aura, so you're hitting more enemies to funnel more damage into your Ragefire. And then when your Ragefire explodes, again, you have a larger radius, so you're able to hit more enemies with your Ragefire because Ragefire is uncapped. So the bigger the radius, the more mobs you can squeeze into that Ragefire. And it's also increasing the critical strike damage bonus of your Immolation Aura, meaning you're just funneling more damage into your Ragefire. So my prediction is that in Mythic Plus or in, raid fights where we might be playing Fel-scarred and it's AoE, you're definitely going to be taking Flamebound now, along with all of these Immolation Aura talents and Ragefire and AFI. And then in a single target situation, you'll likely go Student of Suffering to help you sort of beef up your Essence Break window potentially, or whatever talents we end up taking for a single target. So I do think that this is a really good change that they made to Student of Suffering. They rolled it back a little bit, so now we actually have an option between the two. And now we can look at some other changes that, again, weren't mentioned in the patch notes, but these are bugs that we've been dealing with for a little while now. Honestly, there have been some things with Aldrachi Reaver in particular that are still in retail, and we've been wanting them to fix. And we're going to look at some things that have to do with Warblade's Hunger. So Warblade's Hunger. Consuming a soul fragment causes your next Chaos Strike to deal an amount of additional physical damage. Fellblade consumes up to 5 nearby soul fragments. Whenever you consume a soul fragment, let me just generate one here. You get this buff. called Warblade's Hunger. Now, what was happening before this week is anytime that Wounded Quarry would proc, it would just automatically consume your Warblade's Hunger, and you wouldn't actually get that extra damage on your Chaos Strike. Wounded Quarry was changed recently also. Let me just go over this real quick. Expose weaknesses in the target of your Reaver's mark, causing your physical damage to any enemy to also deal 20% of the damage dealt to your marked target as Chaos. Now, I just want to get this out of the way. Wounded Quarry is not working properly. It's not properly funneling the damage, but we're working on it. There's been communication with the devs. We're doing our best to give them as many details as to what we think is going wrong and how it can be fixed. So this is going to be fixed very soon. And once this gets fixed, the damage of Aldrachi Reaver is going to look a lot better. But anyways, getting back to the point. So we need to get Reaver's Mark on the target to proc Wounded Quarry. So let's do that. Going to use the Hunt just to get Reaver's Glaive quickly. For Reaver's Glaive, Blade Dance, and Chaos Strike. So now, when we get Warblade's Hunger, you can see these sort of comets shooting down and hitting the enemy, those purple things falling from the sky. That's Wounded Quarry. And when that would happen before this week, that would actually consume or just sort of munch the Warblade's Hunger buff. But now that is not happening. They fixed it so it's not actually eating these. We maintain these stacks for as long as we want until we actually press Chaos Strike. Now there is still kind of an issue with it where you'll notice you can get Warblade's Hunger stacks up above 1, right? It stacks up to 5 actually. And with that, it says the damage should increase on your next Chaos Strike, but unfortunately it does not. It still just does the damage of 1 stack. So that's something that I've reported and gotten into the ears of the devs, and we'll see if they're able to fix that. But hey, at least we got one part of Warblade's Hunger fixed. So these are the changes that we got this week, and this is really starting to shape up. You can see that they're taking action and fixing some of the bugs that we've been reporting over the past little while, and getting these hero talent trees to the point where they're actually testable. The one thing still missing from Aldrachi Reaver is getting Wounded Quarry working properly. Once we can get this funnel working, it's going to do a lot of damage, but as of right now, it's just not working as it should. In terms of Fel-scarred, there are a couple things that I'd like to see still. One of the major issues that I'm finding is that because they've changed how inertia works, the Hunt and Vengeful Retreat cause your next Fel Rush or Fel Blade to empower you, increasing damage by 18% for 5 seconds. So you want a Vengeful Retreat and then either Fel Blade in or Fel Rush, and that's what procs your inertia. Aldrachi Reaver has this talent where Vengeful Retreat resets the cooldown of Fel Blade, so anytime you press Vengeful Retreat, you're always going to have a Fel Blade available. Unfortunately, Fel-scarred doesn't have that, so it gets a little dicey. You can Fel Rush, but again, it's just sometimes it makes more sense to be able to Fel Blade, or it would just feel better to be able to Fel Blade, especially in a single target situation because Fel Blade kind of cranks. It does feel a little awkward. The other awkward thing is because this is also triggered by the Hunt, you end up having to hold the Hunt for your 2 minutes. So you end up holding the Hunt to line up with your 2-minute windows with meta instead of just using it on cooldown. Now, obviously, this just feels really weird because you generally don't want to hold the Hunt. You want to just use it as soon as it's up. So what I would like to see is maybe reducing the Hunt in Fel-scarred to a 1-minute cooldown. I don't know how or where you would fit that in somewhere, but again, it would just kind of make it feel a little better. It would add a little extra damage to Fel-scarred because it is falling behind compared to Aldrachi Reaver, and putting it on a 1-minute cooldown would still allow it to line up with meta. Now, again, if you guys want to stay up to date with all of the new Havoc Demon Hunter changes that are coming over the next couple weeks, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you're already a subscriber, make sure you like this video because it does tell YouTube that you want to see more of my videos, and then you'll actually see more of me on your feed, and you'll see all the new videos when they come out. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.